rated everyone.
Lunch. Check. Homework. Check. Jetpack. Check. Save the world from Twonkies. Check, check. The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. The Attack of the Twonkies.
Available now.
Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies was published by THQ and developed by THQ Australia, released for the GameCube and PS2, with an Xbox version being planned but never released. Only noticeable difference between the two is the GameCube's more consistent frame rate. The GBA version is a different game and will be focused on in its own separate review. I'm the Shovelware Extraordinaire, and this is... The story largely follows the plot of the movie with some large deviations from it towards the end, down to the cutscenes early on being abridged reanimations of the special. But don't get me wrong, they're animated just as well as the originals. Why is Cindy using her movie design in 2004? While we're at it, this is the best looking Jimmy Neutron game I know of, although I wouldn't say either version of the movie game are good competition. But for everything it has going for its cutscenes, it lacks in gameplay. We start...
A comet cometh!
This is the worst tutorial level I have ever played. Constantly stopping you for unskippable dialogue, it reaches its worst when explaining the inventor face in Hypercube, where the game takes control away from the player for a full minute and a half. As mentioned before, the inventor face is the game's interpretation of the iconic Brain Blast scenes from the show, having to invent items using parts you find in levels. Gizmos are for the most part fun items that aren't required to complete the game, however some effects are useful, whether it be health regeneration, a speed boost, or non-slip footwear, or in some cases this will only make this harder. Inventions are usually used for level progression items, whether it be a laser shooting lamp or the main Twonkie capturing devices. Super inventions are used solely for the boss items of the game, Jimmy's rocket being the only outlier. And blueprints, which do nothing more than show you the items needed to make a required item. The Hypercube holds all the items invented, also holds items dedicated to Goddard, who plays a very small role in the game, only appearing in small areas where he's required and nowhere else. He only appears 4 times in the whole game, being usually only around for one purpose. After picking up your first blueprint, Vox finally gets the hint and goes away. Luckily, the game's pace is never interrupted again, save for one moment I'll talk about later. After finishing up the rocket ship and leaving the level, we get treated to a cutscene with a joke already told in the TV special, and level over. We end with a long, unnecessary tutorial that does manage to pack in a bunch of fan service and an accurate version of Jimmy Neutron's lab. It sets a bad precedent for the rest of the game, and we're nowhere near done yet.
Blast off!
This is the only space shooter level there is in the game, and it's super underwhelming. You're better off avoiding rather than shooting, because every asteroid takes multiple shots and are harder to hit every time. The level is interrupted halfway to get fuel from an implied abandoned satellite, which shows off the usefulness of gizmos by forcing you to create magnetic shoes to keep Jimmy from floating off into space, that you will use this one time, but not once after. But occasionally the game will give you multiple solutions to one problem. Beyond that, it's simple platforming, a neat puzzle, and repetitive fuel collecting before you're on the second space shooter that ends so quickly you'd barely know what happens. Then finally starts...
Crater Capers!
We start off with a large waste of icy space. This is easily where Goddard has the most use, being prevalent throughout the entire stage, helping get crystals and breaking ice walls, which he never does again. And now Jimmy's gone and blocked the exit. After getting the final crystal, we finally reached the first boss.
Crater Boss!
Easily the best of the bosses. Simply get to the rocket in time using the rock structures to avoid getting hit by what the big guy throws at you. Nothing special, but it works. But this does not stick around, as future bosses are often very hard to hit. All of them blow up in a pretty glorious fashion though. We finally get back to Earth and...
School Days!
Jimmy unknowingly smuggled a life form from Twonkies 3. Carl names it a Twonkie, and Sheen very quickly finds a way to anger the Twonkie through music, and it begins to multiply in the best cutscene in this entire game. This level is mostly waiting and collecting, waiting. Mini-boss Bloodshot at least has the right actor.
Neighborhood Nightmares!
We finally get the tutorial I spoke about. It's short but still forced. But this is where I stop looking at levels individually, as from here on, the game stays very similar. The player now has to capture every Twonkie in a level and never changes. But where, say, Luigi's Mansion combat is thrilling and involved, this game is slow and simple. You can manage just getting super repetitive when the Twonkie amounts start at 30. Of course, we also need a way to deal with the stompers and drops. This is where another item comes in. Turns out, Sheen sinks so badly that the Twonkies devolve. Unlike the special, where Jimmy just straps Sheen to his hovercar, this game turns it into an item, and from here you can see what the rest of the game is going to be. You devolve the Twonkie, which takes forever, then you enter the boring tug-of-war match, and repeat until you can actually leave the level. The game does every now and again change it up a bit, with sometimes making a puzzle out of how to get to the Twonkies, but it's usually nothing interesting, or even downright annoying. Another highlight is the arcade in
Sideshow Spectacular!
Multiple recreations of popular titles, and you can never go wrong with a good Breakout clone. There's one game in here that I don't know the origin of, and I'd like to know if it's a clone of something or not. While I'm in this area, I want to say the game is filled with interactable objects. It's great.
This should be interesting. What? This thing must be broken.
The music is weird, it's very much like the show, almost to a point that I think it is from the show, and none of it really stands out as anything more than background tracks, except... that one's jamming. But let's jump ahead to the end of
Radio Station Rampage!
At this point, we finally collected all the Twonkies, and this guy gives Jimmy tickets to the Greystar concert, finally getting us back in line with the plot of the special. Jimmy ignores his restless bag full of Twonkies, and we're at
Final Boss!
Creative name these things got, huh? This is easily the best boss in the game. It's a combination of all previous bosses with the most annoying parts removed.
Playground Boss!
No longer requires the seesaws.
Frozen Lake Boss!
No longer has the ice shield.
Roller Coaster Boss!
Is easier to aim under and no longer needs to stay in the light due to the removal of the ceiling destroying element. The only thing is the ice floor, which is easily dealt with through inventions. After making the Twinkies go from living on Twonkus 3 to extinct, we get the full version of... what's this song called? Not done yet, though. Just a simple jetpack race. You don't get anything. The arcade games are replayable, at least. This game is the best representation the series got in video games, with accurate locations and well-animated cutscenes. The gameplay itself, however, is repetitive Twonkie capturing with the odd break here and there. The Brain Blast mechanic is the most open version of it in any game, but it fails with situational items, and most less situational items being visual effects or chalk shoes. Unless you really want to explore the settings of the show, it's not really worth going through, and even that is squandered with the lack of a level select. Before this video ends, I just want to thank you for watching it to the end, if you did. This video is a bit of a mess because I've been working on it for nearly half a year now, and I'm apparently not very good at writing scripts, or voiceover, or well, a lot of things. But I'm really proud that I finally got this video out after having the idea for so long. I certainly hope to make more reviews. I really enjoyed it, even if I had to basically abandon everything in the last week to make it in time.